people are online. Welcome to my exhibition called Enchanting Horses, El Encanto de los Caballos, because we are in Spain here in Casa, Cultura, and I'm really somebody who loves horses. And then I found that horse, which was so different that it was great again. I did have a little bit of muscle ache at first, because that horse is twice as wide as that one. So here my muscles weren't used to that, I can tell you. Well, I've been sculpting about 30 years. This is one of my earlier ones, and at first, the first sculptures I made are very naturalistic. And the very first one I made, I noticed when it was finished that this front part was quite good. Because when you sit on a horse, you watch that part all the time. I knew every muscle there, more or less. But the hindquarters were lacking a little bit. Because of course when you clean a horse, you touch it and you know about it. And I realized I need to spend more time just looking at the horse. Analyzing very well how it is. And I did it with those two horses. And they were in a pasture in Holland, and I was working on them for a week. And I remember it was a very warm, sunny week in Holland, exceptional in June. And I was intrigued the way, when he was doing that, the way he looked, because they're perfectly in balance. You can see this turns this way, the tail immediately goes the other way. The hind legs, these legs on the other side where the head is, they're very much wide apart, and that way he keeps his balance. And the reason is, I'll show you also here. I started to sculpt a long time before I started to draw. I used to sculpt also a lot in stone, marble and hard stones. And at a certain point I got a tennis elbow. I couldn't do this anymore, it hurt too much. So I changed my hand, I learned to do it on the left hand side. It's hard at first, but then it works. And I got a tennis elbow here too. So that's how I started with drawing lessons. And that's why I never developed this habit of first making a sketch on paper, then making a sculpture in wax or other material. And now I only make sketches beforehand when there's a commission, when somebody pays me to make a certain horse or dancer. And then I of course need to show them the sketch before, and they need to approve it, and then I make the sculpture. But I must say I find that really hard, because then I feel more limited. Every time when the foal stood up, she was still very young, and she tried to balance both legs. They were almost trembling. She still trouble keeping her weight there, and that's what I try to capture here. That moment from lying down to standing up. But you can see this is still very figurative, very naturalistic in style. With a rearing horse like that one, and then I started to take things off, just to see from what can I take off that still looks like a horse, and you still get the impression as if they're muscles, but of course it is ridiculous, muscles are not this way. It's different, but it still gives you an impression. It's also how our eye works. When I indicate, here you can say oh, that's a pathetic horse, only half a leg, no more. But our eye more or less continues, so we see a leg. It doesn't matter if it's a bit shorter, and here's the same thing. It continues in your own imagination. This for me is about energy, about power, like the pictures you were showing from the horse with a lot of energy in it. A little bit against. And these are abstract in a different way, very small horses. This is more about elegance, more subtle, elegant, small horse. First I made one, then Another one, and I like the way sometimes you get an interaction between two sculptures. And here again, later I made this drawing. So when I use different materials, like here stone, this is serpentine, and there I have a marble one, which is really a very hard stone. The style changes immediately. I think the material more or less dictates my style. With this one, I started with a bucket. A bucket full of plaster. At first, when you know plaster people use on walls and all that. When you make the plaster at first, it's almost liquid, and then it hardens. And it depends a little bit how much plaster you put in it and how much water, how quickly it hardens. So this was just one bucket, and I turned it around and I filed and very carefully, because it's not as strong like the marble that you can really have to hit it. This one was more filing, shaving, like that to get the shape. And here I started with a bone. You know, sometimes you have these beautiful bone shapes. And that was my inspiration for this one. That's why it came out so different from the other ones. But when I liked it, I cast it in bronze, and then you get that. It's a brush, you add the acid, and then with the heating, with the quemador, the burner, you keep on it, depending on how much time you heat it, and how much acid you use, and what kind of acid, you get different colors, because this color is very different from, for instance, that one. It's called Stroke Me Softly.
It invites to be touched.
Everybody does that, and that's why I gave it that name, Stroke Me Softly. You're allowed to touch it, by the way. So this one, you may wonder, that looks very much like the one over there. But I always put, you're allowed to make 7 of the original in bronze. Then you still call it originals. After 7, you actually should destroy your mold. The one you used to make these 7 copies. And I always take care that the 7 different copies always have a different color. That one has much more green in it, this one is more a little bit gold color.
Yeah.
They almost always are, also depending what people want, are on different pedestals. This one is a big wooden pedestal. And this one is very black. Because after a couple of exhibitions, I started to design more and more my own pedestals. Because a pedestal can enhance the movement and make it stronger. And here I added a little bit of different, you know what this is made of? The things you see here? It's molten cans, it's molten beer cans. Actually, the sculptor friend Albert, we work together a lot, he made this, very warm, over the wooden pedestal. And let's see what happens. And you get a big burn light effect. And it doesn't always stick, sometimes it comes loose. And when I looked at the way it was molten, you get these sharp angles here. I thought, I have a sculpture like that. Maybe it goes well together, that shape and that shape. That's why I put them together. So even from 3 the same, you can get very different sculptures altogether. What's next? And this is even a phase more abstract. Here you have no legs or anything, and still it gives you the impression of a horse. Typical Spanish horse. An illusion is long manes, powerful neck, strongly built. Well, the Irish cock there again, and that's with a lot of Arab influence, more subtle head. For the poster, over there. And I call it seahorse because for me, you showed me that picture of that horse standing in the water. And for me, I had this image in my head of a horse coming out of the water and water splashing down, horse frolicking a lot, playing.